The jet hummed with the steady rhythm of flight, a sound so ordinary it made people forget how fragile the sky could be. In seat 14C sat a man who had spent his entire adult life climbing ladders no one else could see. He was a CEO, the kind who wore suits like armor and smiled at investors like it was a weapon. But beneath all that, he was just a single dad trying not to fail the only person who mattered. His daughter, no more than 12, leaned against the oval window, sketching stars on her notepad as if the night sky wasn't enough. The man checked his phone, ignoring the fastened seatbelt light. On the screen was a message confirming what he had arranged: a woman hired to play the part of a girlfriend at a gala next week. Appearances mattered. Investors wanted to see stability, not loneliness. He convinced himself it was practical, nothing more. But his daughter had noticed the glossy picture on his phone. She didn't look up from her drawing when she spoke, her voice soft but sharp enough to cut through his excuses. "Dad," she said, "you don't have to order someone to stay. Some people are forever. You just haven't found them yet." The words landed heavier than turbulence. He wanted to reply, to tell her she didn't understand the world of adults, but deep down, he knew she understood more than he wished she did. He sighed, put the phone away, and forced a smile. "It's complicated," he muttered. The aircraft lights dimmed to a dusky glow, a signal for rest. Passengers settled into quiet, the kind of hush only altitude could command. Flight attendants moved like shadows down the aisle, checking belts, offering water, whispering reassurances. For a moment, it felt like any other flight, routine, safe, forgettable. Then it happened, a sudden jolt, sharp enough to rattle overhead bins and shake plastic cups to the floor. Gasps filled the cabin. The captain's voice cracked over the intercom, urgent, stripped of its usual calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, remain seated. We've been contacted. There's a situation." The man instinctively pulled his daughter closer, his arm across her shoulders, his eyes scanning for answers no one had. Around him, passengers whispered in fear, trying to guess what situation meant at 30,000 feet. And then, faint but distinct, came a sound few civilians could place: the clipped chatter of military radio bleeding through the cockpit speakers. "Falcon 1 to command, we're taking fire. Repeat, we're under attack. We need immediate support." The cabin froze. The words weren't meant for them, yet every syllable carried the weight of danger. Somewhere out there, F-16s were fighting for their lives. Somewhere beyond the thin walls of this aircraft, the sky was no longer empty. The man looked at his daughter, trying to mask the fear tightening his chest. She didn't cry, she didn't scream, she simply whispered, "They need help." And for the first time, he realized this flight was about to become anything but ordinary. Panic moved through the cabin like a ripple in water. People clutched at armrests, at each other, at prayers they hadn't spoken in years. The CEO tightened his hold around his daughter, his mind racing through all the money, power, and influence he had on the ground, and how useless it was up here, in the sky, where none of it mattered. The intercom hissed again, and this time the voice of a young pilot cracked through. "Falcon 2 here, damage to right wing. We've got smoke. Requesting backup. Repeat. Requesting backup now." The father's heart thudded as though every beat carried the urgency of that voice. His daughter's hand gripped his sleeve, but when he looked down, her eyes weren't filled with tears. They were steady, searching the faces of the strangers around them, as if she knew the answer wasn't going to come from her dad. That was when she noticed the woman in the window seat 3 rows up. While others fumbled with oxygen masks that hadn't yet dropped, she sat still, hands folded in her lap, her gaze fixed beyond the glass as though she could see something no one else could. Her calm was unsettling, almost unnatural against the chaos. The father noticed her too. She wasn't panicking, wasn't whispering like the rest. She simply watched. And then, as another desperate voice broke through the static, "We can't hold them. We're hit. Repeat, we're hit." She unbuckled her seatbelt. "Ma'am, please sit down." One of the flight attendants hissed, panic making her words more plea than order. But the woman didn't flinch. She moved forward with a deliberate grace, steady in a storm where everyone else was drowning. She reached the galley, tapped the crew member on the shoulder, and spoke just loud enough for a few nearby to hear. "Patch me through to the comms. Now." The attendant blinked, confused. "The comms? Ma'am, I don't." The woman's eyes sharpened, carrying a weight that silenced argument. "Do it. This isn't my first time in the sky." The father leaned forward, caught between disbelief and curiosity. Who was she? Just a passenger. Or something more. When the crew hesitated, the woman took the radio handset herself. She pressed the button, and her voice flowed into the ether with a confidence that cut through static like a blade. "This is Viper 2, former A-10, callsign Warthog, patch me through to those Falcons." The cockpit fell into silence as if the sky itself was listening. Then, faint but clear, came the response over the frequency, a mix of shock and relief. "Viper, is this? No way, copy, patching you in. God, we thought you were gone." The woman's expression hardened, her calm shifting into command. "Not gone, just waiting. Now listen closely, you're not alone anymore." Passengers stared, their fear momentarily eclipsed by awe. The father's daughter tugged his sleeve and whispered, almost like she'd known all along. "See, Dad, she was never just a passenger." The world outside the cabin was chaos, though from 30,000 feet it looked deceptively calm. The passengers couldn't see the F-16s darting through the clouds, couldn't see the trails of smoke spiraling downward, but they could hear it all through the woman's voice. Her tone was steady, commanding, a lifeline stretched across the storm. "Falcon 1, roll left now, cut speed by 20. You're bleeding fuel but you can still fight. Falcon 2, cover his 6. Stay tight, do not scatter." "Copy." The responses crackled back, shaky but obedient. "Copy, Viper." "Copy." Tightening formation. Every passenger in the cabin was silent now, their fear suspended in the strange calm that her words carried. Even the father, whose hands still gripped his daughter's shoulders, found himself breathing in rhythm with her commands. For the first time, he wasn't thinking of the empire he had built or the mask he wore in the boardroom. He was thinking of survival, and of the woman who seemed to be holding the sky together with nothing but her voice. Another scream of static tore through the radio. "They're on us. Incoming, 2 o'clock high." The woman didn't blink, her eyes narrowed as if she could see it happening beyond the fuselage, as though the clouds outside were a battlefield painted just for her. "Falcon 2, brake hard right, flare now. Falcon 1, stay on vector, don't you dare lose altitude. Trust me." There was a pause. Then, over the comms, came the breathless sound of relief. "Missile evaded. God, that was close." A ripple of gasps and murmurs swept the cabin. The father glanced at his daughter, whose face was lit with something brighter than fear, something like pride. She whispered softly, almost reverently, "She's saving them." Minutes stretched like hours. Every command, every maneuver was guided by her steady presence. To the untrained ear, it was just jargon, just clipped words over static. But to those listening closely, it was something greater, the sound of a warrior slipping back into the cockpit, even without the steel of her Warthog beneath her. And then it came, the message everyone had been waiting for. "Enemy breaking off. They're retreating. We're clear. I repeat, we're clear." Cheers erupted through the speakers, but inside the cabin it was different. The passengers didn't leap or shout. Instead, they exhaled in unison, a wave of relief that shook the air heavier than any cheer. Some wept quietly, others pressed their hands together, whispering thanks. The woman lowered the handset, her shoulders finally easing. For a moment, she looked almost ordinary again, just another traveler on a night flight. But the truth was etched in every eye that had seen her stand. They knew better. The father turned to his daughter, ready to comfort her, but she only smiled, a knowing smile that cut through the haze of everything they had just lived through. "I told you, Dad," she said softly, "some people, they're forever." And as the plane dipped toward its descent, guided home by the safe corridor she had carved in the sky, the passengers sat not with fear, but with awe. They had boarded with strangers. They would land having witnessed a legend.